Good morning. My name is Jennifer Ryon, and on behalf of the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. This webinar begins the industry educational series throughout the months of May and June. Today is titled Through the Lens, Selling in a Virtual World, will last approximately 1 hour and is a live interactive webinar being broadcasted today, March 6, 2021. Before we get started, I would like to thank our 2021 corporate sponsors for their support on hosting events such as this. They support us not because they want their logos up on a screen, but they support the cause, which is to affect positive change in the workers' compensation industry through networking, support, mentoring, and collaboration. The Alliance is inclusive of all professionals in workers' compensation, regardless of career stage, with the belief that we can all learn from and support each other. Please be sure to head to the AWWC website for all upcoming virtual events. Our theme this year is Through the Lens, which will allow us to take different topics each month and focus on specific conversations that will bring value to our audiences. Today, we join myself along with one of our AWWC ambassadors, Ian Ashley, and Marcia Giesler as we dive into deeper the topic around selling in a virtual world. I'm Jennifer Ryon, Chief Operating Officer at Prime Health Services. As COO, I am ultimately responsible for securing the functionality of the company to drive sustainable growth. As part of my oversight of daily operations of the company, I help design, implement, and evaluate business strategies, performance goals, plans, and procedures leading employees to maximum performance. I'm responsible for building employee alignment with company goals and meeting the key targets of the organization. I have over 15 years of experience in client success strategy, revenue growth, customer service, account management, and driving customer value in the medical cost containment fields. Ian brings deep domain experience partnering with organizations across the pharmacy benefit landscape to provide high-value solutions to plan members, sponsors, and their benefit partners. Prior to joining Truveris, Ian held business development roles at MyMatrix, a division of Cigna, Hub, and Global Options, where he developed business relationships in new markets by providing customized solutions for self-insured employers, TPAs, insurance brokers, managed care companies, and insurance carriers. Ian has served as an ambassador with the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation since March 2017, helping with regional fundraising and to support educational and networking events in the Philadelphia market. He enjoys being a part of the Alliance and continues to promote the mission and growth of the Alliance. Marcia Giesler is Vice President of Business Development for Sedgwick, based out of the Atlanta, Georgia office. With over 30 years of industry experience, Marcia has become a trusted resource for both Sedgwick's clients and colleagues alike. She is responsible for new business development, specifically related to alternative risk and specialty markets, including captives, program business, carrier outsourcing, and affinity programs. Marcia develops relationships with various insurance carriers, brokers, program administrators, captive managers, brokers, and consultants, helping build customized solutions focused on achieving maximum results. Making relationships work, new and existing, in a virtual world will be a part of business going forward. Sales leaders who have shifted their approach during the pandemic have found significant success, while others have waited it out to get back to normal. The reality is that normal is virtual and connections still matter. As we go through this hour-long journey of exploring the ups and downs of virtual selling and the success each panelist have had, please join me in asking questions and gaining insight with our panelists today. Please feel free to ask questions, and we'll try and answer as many questions as time permits at the end of this fireside chat. Thank you for the time you are spending with us today, and we hope you enjoy this webinar. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
Wonderful. Glad to be here. Fireside. Love it. Yes, I love the background always. Thank you everyone for joining, all the attendees this morning. If you guys have not been on one of our webinars, we do have our live chat at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom. There's a little chat button. Feel free to ask us any questions as we go through this. So before we get started, I'd like to kind of let you guys have the floor, kind of introduce yourselves, tell us your position, your background, your experience, and what sales, why you guys have passion around selling. So I'll start with Marcia first.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. So, again, my role as a business development person, I focus predominantly on what we call the Affinity space, which again is captives, program business, carrier outsourcing. I've been in the position for 15 years, and for me, I just love meeting people, traveling, and really trying to find a solution for our clients.
Awesome. Ian, give me a little bit of background about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much again for having me here today. This is outstanding way to really address something that is, like you said, the new normal. Me and Ashley, I actually switched jobs, almost careers really, during the pandemic. And so I've been at Truveris now about 5 months, and been in sales a little over 16 years. And really what drives me is just the diversity of people you get to meet every day. Whether it's, an attendant at the airport, all those pieces that come in between. And now, I'm getting to know the FedEx guy, the UPS guy very well. So the new virtual market has us, ready to go with video at any given time. And, again, just happy to be here and excited for today's chat.
Yeah. As a salesperson, you can't take relationships out, right? You become friends with the FedEx. I become friends with, the maybe the little animals outside, because I don't live with anybody. So I'm like, okay, who do I talk to, right? But so let's kind of dive right into the, before we get into the meat of the topic, I want to start with you, Ian. Ian, you just mentioned really quickly that you decided to move into a new role within a new company during COVID. Talk to me about how this occurred, the why, the reasoning, and the ultimate decision on you moving to your current role. This will lay out the groundwork on diving into the actual selling piece of a virtual world, but I wanted to start here so that our audience can understand the changes you had this past year.
Sure, absolutely. So it actually goes back to late 2019. I had a very good professional year in 2019, pre-COVID. And in 2019, I got a phone call from a recruiter, and I said, okay, I'll listen. And I said, boy, Truveris sounds like an interesting company, but thanks, but no thanks, right? And so I dove in a little bit and learned more about what they do and how they impact the market. And I called the recruiter back and I said, look, someone's gonna have to write me a big check to leave, okay? Because I had such a great 2019 and I wasn't missing out on that commission check. So hung up the phone. Fast forward March 7th, I just come back from a ski trip. And the recruiter called me back and he said, hey, I really think you're the guy for this position. Would you please just have a conversation? So I said, sure. Book an appointment, right? So we were book a meeting. And so the world shut down, I think, was it Friday the 13th, March, if I'm correct? Well, I get a phone call that Thursday saying we're suspending the position until further notice. And I said, well, everything happens for a reason. It is what it is. So fast forward, now it's March, the world shut down. It's, the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, and how do you ask someone to buy while all of their personnel is being shifted to a work from home environment? And I finally, after talking to a consultant, he said, look, if someone's going to get offended because you're doing your job, just tell them, look, in times like these, I find it's better to just focus and just do my job. So got through the summer, and August rolled around and they unfroze the position. And I thought, well, this is interesting. I think I'd like to explore it, but I can't get the hiring manager or the HR person to take my phone call. Mm-hmm. So I finally sent the hiring manager a text message and just said, look, I'm going to be making a change really soon. I've got 2 opportunities in front of me. Both are very interesting, but I would hate for this opportunity to forego itself, right? And without having 10 minutes to talk to you. He called me back on the spot. 10-minute conversation led to an hour conversation, which led to 9 45-minute interviews, and then ultimately an offer right before Thanksgiving. And then January 11th, I started in my new role. that's a long story, but
No.
there was a lot of evolution to, making the change. And what I would tell you the why is, I've been in workers' comp a little over 12 years. I've made some fantastic relationships. I've been a part of the Alliance now going in my 5th year, great mentors throughout. And when I saw the technology of what Truveris was doing to the health plan market space, I said, there's an opportunity in the workers' comp space, because transparency is such an issue in pharmacy. So really, as I dug into talking with some of their analysts, I thought, there's a really bright future to make a very positive impact, not just to plan sponsors, but to employers, employees. And I think real soon we're going to see a heavy impact in the workers' compensation market. So really excited about that.
Yeah. So you just love change. You love a challenge, right?
Well, here's what I would tell you. For those of you that are in the audience today, you probably know a gentleman by the name of Craig Rollins, very influential in workers' comp. Craig was a mentor of mine at my Matrix. And, Craig, when I believe it was right before he was leaving, and it was right around the time that we had been acquired by Express Scripts, he addressed the team and he said, guys, look, one thing that's constant in this industry is change. And he's right. And one of the things that I did is I reflected on that. And I said, with change, change is good and change can be bad. But where you as an individual really have the upper hand is that if you don't like the change, you can make a change too. And, it's really about your adaptability to an environment, just like we all adapted during COVID. Some of us had it harder than others. I mean, we know many people that lost jobs. But what I found through that change and that challenge was, because we were all subjected to what we were subjected to, what came out of it was innovation. And that's what comes out of any crisis moment is innovation. And so I think we're going to see a lot of change, not just for ourselves as individuals in our workplaces, but I think you're going to see some companies developing some fantastic tools that are going to make workers' compensation explode again, right? Because we had claims were down, but now we got people going back to work, claims are up. And I've seen there's a couple companies that are startups that they're doing some great things to just minimize risk.
Well, you definitely laid the groundwork on where we're jumping into. So I appreciate, you
Sure
going through that. And every day there's a change, right? It's how you accept it and you, move in it. You can only control yourself. And I think it's your mindset and where you push through. So I want to start at the very beginning here. Marcia, can you talk to me about your pre-COVID sales approach and how you typically start your prospecting cycle to close a sale? So let's talk about pre-COVID.
Yeah, sure. So because I'm in a niche space, which is, again, the affinity space, I had half the country as far as territory. And so for me, the best way to get, I guess, the best bang for your buck is really to go to as many networking events as possible. So various conferences and alike. And so that's really where a lot of my opportunities came up, just by networking, just being in front of people. But I was traveling every week or every other week. So I was gone a lot. And, for me, the process was really, starting that introduction, trying to get in front of people, trying to get, them to really recognize the difference in this space. Sedgwick's very well known as far as who we are as an organization, but the affinity space is unique. So you really had to go out and, get everybody's attention. So it was different. It was definitely different. And I think the traveling piece was probably the biggest part of just being in meetings constantly. Oh,
You're on mute.
yeah, I can't hear you.
Of course. Technical. And going from a market that's primarily based on sales being driven from in-person meetings and strong relationships, and Marcia, you hinted on this too, the in-person meetings and the networking and all of that. What was the hardest part of shifting to a virtual world? I'm not sure, like me, I went from 9 weeks in a row to on the road. And the last actually trip that was for the AWWC, we had an ambassador retreat, and I went from that to nothing. So tell me about that. What was the hardest part shifting?
Well, so I was pretty spoiled because like I said earlier, before the pandemic, I spent a week in Breckenridge, Colorado skiing. So I sort of felt like I went on this vacation and then I came back to like darkness, right? Um, uh, but again, really it was being sensitive to other people's needs, meaning on the buyer side, and just if you didn't have their cell phone number, you can email all you want. If they're not going to respond back, I mean, how do you get a hold of somebody who's not in their office, right? So really it was the challenge of getting people to pick up the phone. But I think by the summertime, I started to see more adaptation to this environment. And people started to kind of crawl out from their rocks and become much more active. So, again, it's not something I can control, but it was frustrating, especially when you're trying to meet numbers and make change, for a group. But I thought the upside to that challenge is once we started to see, people adapting to the environment, it really humanized people that I didn't think were human, if that makes sense. Like, you always see them in a suit, they're always perfect. And then when you see them at home and they're in a t-shirt and a baseball cap and the dog's barking and the kids walking in the room, it's like, it really humanized the moment and allowed for more natural conversations to exist. And I felt like business started to roll again.
Yeah, so we talked about that transition and people kind of like culture, shock, and then having to accept it and kind of move through it. So Marcia, when the pandemic hit and everything shut down, how long did it take you to shift your sales approach and embrace the virtual world of selling? Was it like overnight, or was it, what talk about that? Because I think the audience probably, we're all very on point, and it's like you think everyone else is doing great and you're the only one struggling. But kind of talk to me about your process of shifting.
Right. So really, to be honest, I think for 3 months, I was still in shock about what was going on with the world. Right. I mean, I was glued to the TV, constantly looking at, what's going on, And so I would say, again, it probably took me a good 3 months to really say, okay, we need to change. And I give our company a ton of credit because, and other companies out there, they started pushing the virtual world. They started pushing these, the WebExes, the Teams, the Zooms, the various calls to get connected. So, for me, I would say July was probably, hey, you know what, we can do this. We can adapt. We realize this is not going to go away anytime soon. And so we have to adapt and we have to change. And so I would say probably about 3 months.
Okay. And what about you? You jumped in about a week.
Well, I mean, the focus was there, but the results took much longer, really, than I would like. So, I would also say, though, that for the last 16 years, so I have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, and for the last 16 years, I mean, I've been on the road, that's just what I did. And what was really weird was the first couple months of like, I'm home, like I'm never home, especially like once I would say April starts up with conference season, right? And goes all the way till December. You weren't doing golf outings, you weren't doing conferences. And, but what I did do was I embraced the normalcy of what it was like to be at home and spend more time with my kids. I mean, I was an art teacher, I was a gym teacher, I was all these things to my kids because they were at home and they were only doing like 2 hours of work. So, we had fun with it. I mean, we made up schedules and, had it hung on a whiteboard in the laundry room for the kids to say, okay, now it's gym class and, now it's art. So, I mean, again, embracing this awful thing that has happened to the world, right? But just trying to make lemonade when you can.
Yeah. I think, we all had moments where we had to check ourselves every day, maybe, and refocus, and allowed us to slow down. But others around us might not have been able to jump in as quickly. 3 months, when you look at now that it's been over a year, you were able to kind of quickly adapt very quickly, right? But those around you, Ian, did you see those around you embrace the virtual world? This is a multi-part question. So did you see those embrace the virtual world around you? If so, do you believe it was because your company culture embraced it? Did leadership help guide the team, or just their own personal drive? And then if not, what do you believe the key differences of how you were able to approach the virtual selling versus those around you?
So it was weird. I believe So before I switched roles, I believe in the beginning, because we had 75,000 employees, right, all part of Cigna, like our VPN, I don't think could handle the bandwidth for 75,000 employees to be in a virtual environment, right, all the time. So I would say for the first few months, like it was cameras off unless you were presenting. Again, I went old school and picked up the phone and tried to drive energy that way. But I would say it was probably somewhere like in the July, August timeframe was when we really just pushed for more of the virtual experience. And you can't make somebody turn their camera on. Internally it was good to see faces. Externally, with the external stakeholders, again, I'd have folks say, hey, I'm not going to be on camera today because I just woke up, or I have allergies and my eyes are swollen or something like that. But now I feel like we're on an episode of the Jetsons, because we're all, we're talking through the computer all the time. And and again, it has normalized what we do.
Mm-hmm. Was your company, your former company, and then your current company, did they embrace it? Did they give like employees the grace to, hey, we're all going through this, right? And it's going to take some time, kind of talk to me about the support levels that helped you through the transition.
Sure. So I would say, both my previous company and my current company, they did embrace it. I know where I am now at Truveris, they gave everybody an allowance to get themselves comfortable and set, at home, whether it was a technology need or just, facilitating a desk or something like that. So it's interesting now, because with my new coworkers, it's like, I really had the opportunity to be onboarded, and I was onboarded, I felt in a very quick and meaningful and impactful way that I almost felt like I was at our corporate office in New York City. And mind you, we have 250 employees, 90 of which were hired during COVID. I've met one physically, and it's only because he happens to live like 8 miles down the street. And one day we said, what the heck, let's go meet for an iced tea and a sandwich, because I need to get out of my house, But I think both organizations did a great job at saying, okay, this isn't going to end anytime soon. And, when you look at the amount of, dollars that weren't spent on travel, that gave companies the opportunity to allocate those dollars for an at-home professional environment.
Mm-hmm. Marcia, what do you think the biggest hurdle is for people in today's virtual environment when coming to sales, when you're looking at the sales prospecting and just the sales process?
I think the biggest hurdle is you're not networking, you're not on the golf course, you're not having dinners, you're not meeting someone in the conference hall. You're truly by yourself in your room, trying to find ways to be creative. And I think that's been the biggest hurdle, just trying to adjust to finding a new way to connect to people in this virtual environment.
Mm-hmm. So you've been successful during this virtual environment. It took you a couple months, but you've embraced it, and now you're doing phenomenal. What advice would you give our audience who still is struggling with not being able to travel and be in front of prospects or clients?
I think Ian said it earlier, you have to embrace change. It's tough, but it's, this is not going away. I think we're going to see that there were some positive things that came out of this. And, it's really, you have to embrace change. You have to realize that you have to be creative and find ways to connect.
Mm-hmm. Ian, what about you? What do you think, or what would you tell the audience who struggles?
I would say, you have to embrace it again. I hate to repeat myself, but you have to embrace it. And then you just have to put yourself in a mindset that you have to stay focused. Mm-hmm. And, I hate to be cliche, but think outside of the box. There are ways to get in front of people creatively, whether it's through social media or, I got wise to a couple things knowing people were in the office, and I've actually sent 2 sheet cakes to an office with my business card superimposed on top of it.
Oh my goodness.
And then I frosting, please call me. I've done that over the years. So I did that pre-COVID, and it works
Mhm.
because I always get a phone call back. I've only had one person yell at me and say, "Why would you do that?" And I said, "Well, I wanted to talk to you. It wasn't to offend you. You don't have to eat the cake, but I got what I wanted. You called me back." But I would just say, just get creative. Talk to other salespeople too, because I think Jennifer, you said it earlier. You feel like you're the only one struggling and everyone else is doing well. And I think what you're going to find is we all have a story to tell. And collectively with the audience that's here, I mean, everybody's got a story, some good, some bad, and a combination of everything in between.
Yep. I agree. Okay. So I love the feedback, the chats that are coming in. It actually fits perfectly because I wanted to go high level on just, our feelings right through the COVID, but now let's shift gears a little bit into the mechanics of selling. I'm going to start with Marcia. Marcia, how does the discovery process change in a virtual environment? So the prospecting, how has it changed or what are you doing?
Honestly, for me, the discovery process is the same because I think when we initially got that RFP or whatever that process would have received as far as that new opportunity, you still had to get on the phone. You still had to, engage the whether it be the broker or the carrier, whoever the person may be. So for me, it hasn't changed that much. I think if anything, you're doing it video. You may be adding a video and seeing them face to face versus just picking up the phone. So for me, I would say it hasn't changed as much.
Okay. How do you, Ian, how do you build credibility virtually with your prospects? Especially, I mean, you're newer, so in the new pipeline, you do have, your contacts and workers' comp, but how do you build the credibility if you don't already have the credibility with that individual?
Sure. So that's a great question. So when I came to Truveris, I had no pipeline. It was, here's your territory. We have some channel partners. Call on these brokers. Some we have exclusives with, others we don't. And really just be yourself. You can't show up and throw up. You gotta ask the right questions. But I think this environment again has humanized even the buyer, right? So where the buyer may be, close to the chest on giving up information. Some of my greatest successes were within the last few months where I've got an NHL team in contracting. I've got a very large gun manufacturer in contracting. And what was great about those wins is we actually helped the broker win BOR. So as I develop that pipeline and build the credibility by just being natural, being myself, knowing when to stop, right? And knowing when to go. Again, I hate to be so general, but it's about the adaptability to the market. And you can tell, when someone doesn't want to talk. The value that we bring, not to plug our company, but the value that we bring is, we're bringing savings and member engagement to pharmacy. And why that's important is because we had companies or employers where they said, look, we may file for bankruptcy. We need to do something with our pharmacy program. We're self-insured and we saved them $1.5 million and they didn't have to file for bankruptcy. And with those savings, they were to allocate it towards, a piece of shop equipment or something like that. So, there was a real drive in the value that we brought during all of this and still do today.
Mm-hmm. We got to ask the question to give some specific examples on how you got creative over the last 12 months. I'm going to start, Ian, Marcia, whoever has something. Marcia. All right. We'll give you the floor. Think of anything creative that
we did a couple of virtual happy hours, right? You find the time to get on the call with them. I would say, for me, I tried to re-engage constantly, right? It was, when I was traveling with work, to go to a conference, I would take the time to set up the meeting, then you have your meeting, then you have your thank yous. With the virtual world, you can have your meeting, do it all at one time, and then have follow-up constantly, right? So for me, I just tried to stay in front of people as much as I possibly could.
What about you, Ian?
So, yeah, again, so specific examples. Okay, so the cake thing works.
I'm stealing that, by the way.
Music. I've been doing it for 10 years. But no, really, to Marcia's point, people are, I think, are more punctual because of the virtual meeting setup, and I've been finding myself having more 15 to 30-minute meetings with prospects where it's like, look, we don't need a whole hour. Just give me 15 minutes of your time and we'll get to the point, talk about it, and we'll have, opportunities for additional follow-up. So I think shorter, more meaningful meetings has been good for me. But then also just, I've got a great sense of humor and sort of a wacky sense of humor. And so I've used that to play into, getting re-engaging and getting in front of people. So, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I literally started over. I mean, my network still means something to me, and I still, utilize the network, but I've now expanded my network. But again, I mean, you just can't be afraid to just persist, without being annoying, right?
Yes. Being tenacious and but not being obnoxious.
Yeah, we did some virtual lunch and learns as well, where we sent, it just popped in my head, we sent out gift cards to the individual folks so that they could have like an Uber Eats delivered to their desk at home. And then we did like a PBM 101, and just tried to, because with sales, I mean, to me, sales is about education. You're constantly educating. It's up to you to see the value to make the decision that, yes, I should go with this partner, or no, I should not, there's a better opportunity over here. So, I kind of value it as I'm a teacher just as much as I'm a student.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of questions asked here on, I think everyone's eager to get back in front of people, but we need to embrace the virtual, right? But now that the country is opening up, are you guys seeing prospects or current clients asking for in-person? And how are both of your companies handling that? Is it still no travel? Are you still doing virtual? Or, where are we at today within both of your all's company? Marcia, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so for me personally, I haven't had anyone ask for an in-person meeting, although one of my colleagues did just recently. They had a presentation that had probably 10 people, and they wanted to make sure that you were vaccinated before you came to the meeting. But once they got there, no worries with the mask, you could present. So, yes, I think companies are adjusting, and we are opening up going forward. So.
Yeah, so currently we're still shut down, but we can get approval if it's going to be an impactful revenue generating opportunity. I have a broker that I work with out of Massachusetts who he's just chomping at the bit for me to come up. And I said, we'll work something out. Weather's starting to break, and we'll probably get out and hit the golf course. But nothing of major impact. I see there's something in here about happy hours. I haven't seen anything all that grandiose, right, of an opportunity. But, the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic has been much more conservative through COVID, as opposed to other parts of the country. And, so we just want to respect what our prospects and clients want, because we could say, oh, no, we're open for travel. But if you don't want me in your office, or you're not in your office, where am I going? There's nowhere to go.
Yeah. From my level, being the COO in Prime, that's really how we're approaching it. We need to be very respectful and mindful of, the environment. There's no point in rushing it or pushing that topic when we've all been successful in this virtual world. I know selfishly, I'm like, oh my God, I just want to get out and see people and, feel alive again. But the same thing with us. We're just being very mindful of opening up too soon or traveling. Now, if a client or a prospect is requiring it or talking about it, we're doing the one-off scenarios. I think we're also really evaluating. It's not just, hey, you can go, play golf because I might know somebody that's there, or, anything like that. It's more targeted, and it's not as open, especially right now. But that's kind of what we're seeing or we're evaluating. And I don't know about you guys, we're also asking our network and our other companies, okay, what are you doing? And getting, I think we're all kind of in that same boat right now, is we're taking 1 week at a time and just evaluating how, the country is, and every state is different. So if you're primarily in states that have been open and that's all you sell to, then you fit within that scenario. But if you're a company like all three of ours that were national, you just have to be mindful of the audience and what you're talking to. And virtual is working. So just continue to hone in on that and embrace it. I think that's our key word today. That's our go-to word that we're using. Marcia, talk to me about what you love about this new type of sales approach.
I really, to be honest, being more productive and being more successful. I mean, I've had better, and the company as a whole, so not just me, but the company as a whole has done very, very well in this environment. And a lot has to do with the fact that we have multiple products, but, again, I'm not doing the set up the meeting, have the meeting, the thank you notes. I'm able to, get everything accomplished in a week, or at one time, and again, do the follow-up. So for me, that's really that's what's helped been with successful.
Okay. And can you give me an example of a big win you had during the past 12 months? Talk about what it was, the challenges, successes, and learning moments from that big win.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my first win here with Truveris was great, because I didn't expect anything, in the first probably 6 months as I was building pipe. But based on what we do, we are calendar driven. It's usually a 7-1 or a 1-1. So I met a broker for the first time. She did not have broker of record yet, and she was looking at the medical plan and just said, I think these guys need some help. So I was able to acquire the data. We ran the data. We came back with a solution for this as a good gun manufacturer, and the savings we were able to bring in pharmacy was enough for the CFO to change broker of record to this firm. So it was a win for them. It was a win for us. It put me on the board, and then it made me realize that even if the broker doesn't have BOR, the value that we can bring to change, the bottom line for a company is real. So again, I mean, it's about embracing and just keeping your head up and persisting, because you can win in a virtual environment. You can win.
Yeah. As we continue this as we're going through this conversation, I think what is resonating with me is quit overthinking. The moment you're overthinking sales and you're thinking you can't do it in a virtual world, that's where you're going to get stonewalled. You're going to get frozen, right? We got to stop thinking, oh my God, like you can't do it. It's so different. You can only do in-person meetings. But the moment that you shift your mentality and get out of your head, that's really where companies are thriving and being successful. I think, Ian, you said that you guys had your biggest growth during COVID. And so did Marcia. Tell me about, Sedgwick has had some huge growth numbers during COVID. Can you speak specifically on why you believe some companies have struggled, but you and your division have thrived during this time?
Yeah, and for Sedgwick, and I can talk really to what I think our success has been, is we've have a variety of product offerings, right? So yes, the workers' comp claims were down, but we also offer disability, right? So we have disability claims. We also have property, and so we had a lot of business interruption claims. So we really saw a shift, and Sedgwick was also very creative in coming out with various products for COVID, cleaning and, different things to help tracing, COVID. So we came up with and became very creative to this, event that's going on with us today.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece. I can speak specifically to my company as well. The beginning allowed everyone to slow down and evaluate and really watch the market and see and plan. And we launched a couple of new products during COVID. And that allowed us to continue to diversify, and to say that you can't do it during COVID or in a virtual world. That just, again, you're allowing a situation to overcome you. right? Rather than achieving something more or pushing through it. Yes, it might be difficult, or yes, you know, when you're talking to a new prospect, you're like, well, it's better to go to dinner with them and building the relationship, but you can still do it, right? The consistency, you know, continuing to have ongoing calls, even the 15 minutes or 30 minutes. You don't have to do an hour or 2-hour meetings. It's that continuous touch point and just, you know, being able to push through in those moments. Marcia, as the nation is beginning to open up and travel will most likely start up again, do you think the virtual selling is here to stay? And tell me about the changes you think are here for good, and then those that will go back to pre-COVID times.
Yeah, so do I think virtual sell? I think we're going to have a hybrid, right? I think there will be, you know, opportunities where it's going to be better just to do it on the phone, do it via WebEx versus being in person. I think the ones, at least that I've seen, you know, presentations specifically, I would prefer those be in person, because a lot of times, you know, we'll have presentations and the videos are off and you can't read the crowd, right? You have no idea if they're listening, multitasking, what they're doing. So, you know, I think, you know, hopefully presentations will be in person for the majority of them at least, but those, you know, half an hour meetings that you fly to, you know, takes 4 hours of your day to go somewhere, I think that will change.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Ian? What do you think is here to stay or go back to normal?
Yeah, I think I agree with Marcia. I mean, it's really going to become a hybrid, you know, and I think schools may stay the same as well with sort of like a hybrid program, or you'll have the choice. And you know, the presentations, reading the crowd is everything. Whether you're a stand-up comedian or a salesperson, you need to know what the crowd is liking and not liking. And you know, when the cameras are off, you can't do that. And then you wonder if they're even actually listening or if they're even in the room. So, you know, I'd like to see conferences open back up. I mean, there's just, you know, there's people around the country that I would love to see in person, right? But I think it's going to be, I think we're probably a good 9 to 12 months away from anything like that, just based on what most corporations are doing. And just with the vaccine count, right? We're not there yet. We're close, but we're not there.
Yeah, you touched upon conferences, and we had Debbie in the audience kind of ask us about, did you, for both of your companies, we had virtual conferences over the last 12 months. Did you guys attend any of the virtual conferences? And then if so, how did you get the most out of it? Did you see value? Kind of talk me through that, because, and I'll give you my opinion too from what we saw at my organization. But Marcia, did you attend any conferences?
Yeah, actually, just last week we had RIMS. So, and then this week we have Target Market. So, you know, while I'm not attending every session, I did like that RIMS kind of spread it out over 2 weeks. So, you know, it can fit to your schedule, right? And you can set up meetings and appointments during your schedule. But I think, you know, yeah, I mean, we've done it. You know, some were more successful than others, you know, so I think it just depends on, you know, people were just getting adjusted to it or getting used to it. And how do you, again, interact and get things going? So,
yeah, I think at the beginning, the conferences that were early on in COVID that tried to switch to virtual really fast, struggled a little bit. I don't know the ROI that came out of it. I mean, speaking from my company's perspective, it was a little bit low, but I think now as it's progressed, conferences have found what platforms work, what the agendas, how to do breakout sessions. I know the AWWC, we had one at the end of last year, and it was phenomenal. The networking events that we had, the connection, the real talk. Hopefully, and just a plug to our YouTube channel. If you didn't attend that conference, we have all those sessions out on our YouTube channel, so you can check those out. But what did you guys see that as well? Did you see at the beginning the conferences that tried to host virtual? It was a little bit, they were trying to pivot, but as we're getting into this now, it's a lot more user friendly, and you're getting a lot more out of it now.
I would say hats off to the folks that tried to switch so quickly. I think people were patient as a result of that. There was a lot of unknowns, you know, are we ever going to see anyone ever again? But I would say I've probably attended a handful of virtual conferences, and I got something out of all of them. You know, and it's best when you can actually see who's attending, so you can set up some of those breakout just for like a quick 15-minute meeting. I think Debbie had asked about conferences and, you know, marketing and branding and our company sponsoring. They are. You know, we're working on a campaign right now for a couple of associations that'll be a virtual conference, and we'll put some bucks up at it. It's worth it because I think the folks that are coordinating these need the marketing dollars to help drive the technical platforms and, you know, all the behind the scenes things that you just don't see. So it's, you know, it's money going to the organization to help drive a new environment for us.
Mm-hmm. This is a good question from the audience. I love this, and this is probably what you guys heard at the very beginning, and maybe even still too. From a sales prospecting, when a company says we are waiting until COVID is over to move forward with anything, what did you do when you got that response? How did you respond on that piece? Because it's not just okay. Like, what did you do?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I think, you know, again, watching the news, I was hoping that COVID was going to be over in like 3 months, right? So you're just like, okay, sure, you know, I mean, but now it's the follow-up, checking in, say, hey, what are we doing now, right? Because it's going to be here for a while, for sure. Go ahead, Ian.
I'll be candid for a moment. I think I probably reached for a bottle of desk whiskey and a glass and said, how am I ever going to push this thing forward? But no, I think the reality is, you know, we've all gotten that response. And sometimes I think it's a cheap response because it's an easy way to maybe just get somebody off your back. But what I would encourage people to do is you can still be a thought leader. You can still provide educational moments to those folks because you have to stay on their radar because you don't know the moment that their policy is going to change. And you may have missed that opportunity. You know, the people I feel for the most are the folks that are selling to adjusters because you have adjusters at home now. How do you market when you're on a panel? You can, it's really challenging. So if you have a program sale, right, you're talking to the decision makers, but if you're already part of that panel, you know, how do you overcome that hump? So I'd be curious to see what the folks who are selling at the adjuster level, what they've done to be creative in this time.
Yeah, and that might be, we're doing the industry educational series throughout the month of May and June. And one of the sessions is talking about with service providers. So I'm sure we'll add that into that topic, especially when it's that adjuster selling, because I think a lot of us are at that corporate sale, not the desk sale. We have about 10 minutes, so I want to be mindful of the time. What was the biggest thing you learned moving into a virtual world? And I'm going to start with Marcia. Marcia, what was the biggest thing you learned?
I would have to say more on a personal level. I think you learn to appreciate your family and friends and your coworker, everything around you. You know, it can get lonely in a room by yourself. Not having coworkers coming in and out. I think just embracing, again, the word embrace, but just having and realizing that, you know, we had those connections and missing that, right?
Yep. No, I agree fully on that one. That was probably one of my biggest pieces as well. Ian, what about you?
Yeah, I think it redefined the phrase, don't sweat the small stuff for me. It really, you know, in the beginning, it really shifted okay, I have to figure out how to work. And then once I figured out how to work and then I changed careers, like my focus and drive changed, but I realized that, you know, there are people that have it way worse than I do. And I'm fortunate to have a roof over my head, to have a job, to have a support system, whether it's, you know, family, friends. But what it also did too was when I actually got to see my family, my parents over the summer, you know, it was weird. There was no hugs and kisses, right? We all kind of kept our distance. And, but when we came home from that trip, it was when like the light bulb went on and I thought, wow, I've never been more excited to see my family. And, you know, although there's this horrible thing happening, you know, losing your job stinks too, but having a life to live is more important too. You know, you'll find another job if for those folks that maybe lost their job during COVID, but literally just don't sweat the small stuff. Like life's too short. Just keep grinding and good things will happen. You know, if you let your foot off the gas, well, then you'll come to a standstill, but you got to just keep pushing.
Yeah. Got to keep moving. And I was thinking through this during the session. Do you guys read? Are you guys readers? Do you guys read different books? Did you have any new sales books or anything that you learned or you could give the audience of, hey, I know it's common, but okay, the challenger customer. I like it. That actually is a good one. I read that one too. Have you heard of the knuckle dragging sales?
Mm-mm.
So it's a book and I love it because we're talking about, objectives and, I think it's a little bit harder too when you're in the virtual and you're not in front of them. Just thinking about, Ian, you telling us about the sheet cake. That book has some really good, just like, well, that's, yeah, I knew that, but you don't think it, common things, but it's about, not letting that gatekeeper, whoever your person is, that's not letting you get to the next phase. How do you build that relationship? Not just being in front of them, talking to them and calling them in different approaches. So, Marcia, did you read any books during this COVID time?
Honestly, no. I think for me, again, it was just trying to get focused on finding how we can, sell in this virtual world.
Mm-hmm. What about, so obviously female, male, did you guys see any difference on, the approaches from a gender of virtual selling or the virtual world, videos, non-videos? Did you guys see any differences outside of just normal selling?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I mean,
we got it from the audience.
Yeah. I mean, I will tell. So I suffer what's called Midwestern naivety. Okay, I'm originally from the Midwest, but to me, it's about character. So you either have character, you bring character to the meeting, or you don't. And I don't know. Like I think it was just business as usual, with the exception that we're just talking to a screen, to a two-dimensional figure. That's a really good. I'd like to do a study on that, I think.
Marcia, did you see anything that was different or?
I probably did. I think that just the approach, to me, people were more receptive to talk. I felt like, and I don't think it was a male female thing. I just think it was more of, they don't have so many, what's the word? Just people coming into them at, if you're in the office, you have 1,000 people coming into your office all the time. I think they were more perceptive and willing to take the time and listen because they don't have those distractions. I guess that's the word, distractions.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're rounding out the hour. I wanted to leave it to you guys. Do you guys have anything else you want to leave to the audience or say to the audience? And anyone in the audience, if you have any other specific questions that you want us to answer, please type it out quickly. But I'll leave it. Ian, Marcia, do you guys have anything?
Marcia, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just keep going, embracing change, and we'll get through this all together. But I guess enjoy the moment when we have it.
Yeah, and I'd say to folks that are maybe younger in the industry, just grasp onto some mentors, and sometimes just talking through your problems will help you solve what it is that you're trying to solve. And it is tough, but again, to repeat from earlier, I mean, just keep grinding. It'll all work out. We're already seeing some really positive changes, not just in our space, but I think just across the country, right? I think if everybody gets vaccinated as quickly as possible, we'll be shaking hands again, hopefully, swinging golf clubs, having drinks. So just keep your chin up, keep grinding.
Yep. I think at the end of the day, we stay real. We're all human. I think this definitely humanized everybody. And selling is selling, relationships are relationships, right? And the networking, tap into those networks. The AWWC, we have collaboration sessions almost every other week. We have resources available. Ask people, be vulnerable. I think that too. I think if you, be honest with each other. We don't all have to be perfect and prim and proper. Reach out to those that you feel safe in and ask them suggestions, because we all can't do it alone. And I think that's one big life lesson we've learned over these last 12 months. So,
Jennifer, could I just add something real quick?
Yeah.
This last question here about sales and innovations, resources. This is the perfect platform. So if you don't know your local ambassador for the Alliance, get to know them, because I'll tell you, there are all walks of life in this organization with wonderful individuals who can help you, whether it's just bouncing ideas off of them or a more formal mentorship. I think the Alliance has done just an incredible job at staying relevant and just being genuine to the industry and giving back with these types of platforms. So if you don't know your local, find it, go to the website, and anybody on this organization is going to help.
Yeah, and what's great about virtual is you don't even have to do local, right?
True. There you go.
You can find anyone, look at their company, look at their background, and see, if there's any similarities or something that you aspire to be, tap into that, because Ian, you're right. I mean, the ambassadors are there. We want to talk. We want to help bring up this industry in any way possible. Marcia, I didn't know if you had anything else to.
Nope, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was such a great conversation. I love this topic. I'm very passionate around selling and the changes that we all have. So Marcia, Ian, thank you guys for joining us for this year. Everyone, thank you, the attendees. Again, like I said, if you know someone that would benefit from this video, we're going to have it up on our YouTube and resource channels here early next week. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you again, and have a great rest of the week, okay?
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Ian. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a great day.